Hello there, everyone, and welcome to TVS Nightline. Here with me, Cheryl Shaminato, and as always, thank you for joining us tonight. Now on to the headlines. Our top headlining story today, as these are the latest visuals of the flood situation around Gita, Kuching at around 10 p.m. tonight. We could see that water levels are at knee-deep, seen through the village residents wading in the water. Now, the flood affected 165 victims from 38 families in Kampong Gita. Village residents are being vigilant in case heavy rain resumes, along with the king tide phenomenon causing the Sarawak River to overflow and water levels to rise even further. Meanwhile, the number of displaced victims of the flood in Sarawak continues to rise, with as many as 3,387 people from 885 families evacuated to 46 temporary evacuation centres as of Thursday evening. Besides Kuching, evacuation centres have also been opened in Samarahan, Serian and Miri.
Non-stop heavy rain since Tuesday have inundated and submerged many areas in the state. The situation was made worse with the king tide phenomenon. Meanwhile, heavy rains also caused landslide in Bau, Padawan and Batu Kitang. Several areas in Bau have been cut off from the outside. Sarawak Energy reported that as many as 21 areas in Padawan and Bau are experiencing blackouts after trees toppled over power lines. However, electricity supply have been restored to many areas this evening. The Malaysian Meteorological Department forecasts severe weather with heavy rains continuing till Sunday in northern Sarawak, comprising Miri, Limbang and Lawas, which are expected to experience heavy rain.
Now, meanwhile, Chief Minister Abang Johari Tun Openg paid a visit to the temporary evacuation centre in Haji Kamaruddin Hall at Kampong Sekedup. Now, he urged all flood victims to adhere to the stipulated standard operating procedures that have been set by the Ministry of Health.
Kita tidak mahu juga keadaannya boleh memberi kesan kepada masyarakat disebabkan kita ini dalam keadaan COVID-19.
Regarding the situation in Lundu, Abang Johari said there is no need for a temporary evacuation centre to be set up there as the situation there is still under control.
Maknanya Lundu sekarang ini adalah terkawal. Tidak begitu orang kata kena keadaan yang lebih berbahaya. Tetapi kuat daerah Bau dan Kuching sudah ada 2,268 mangsa.
Meanwhile, a family who lives in Kampong Sadar went through a frightening ordeal when their house got crushed in a landslide. Now, Luqman Muhammad has the report. Fortunately, there were no casualties recorded in the 4:30 a.m. landslide on Tuesday.
Kira macam hujan lebat, lepas kira 4:30 pagi tu kami ingatkan biasa pukul jam macam tu kucing kah biasa atas atap. Tiba-tiba makin kuat bunyi dia, makin rasa tak selesa. Kami orang terus bangun, tengok rumah nenek kami dah tak ada, dah ditenggelami tanah runtuh. Ya, kami rasa bersyukurlah sebab nyawa nenek kami masih selamat, kami masih ada dengannya lagi. Sebabnya ialah seorang lagi nenek kami yang ada.
According to Florina, her grandmother's house is located on top of the hill. On Tuesday, concerns for their grandmother's safety due to the increasingly bad weather invited her in stay with them for the time being. Meanwhile, Siburan Fire and Rescue Department Chief urged all the residents to be vigilant due to the unpredictable weather.
Kita dapati satu buah rumah telah runtuh 100% dan 2 buah rumah berisiko tinggi, di mana kita telah mengarahkan Cik Emily serta keluarga untuk berpindah supaya agar mereka selamat. Di mana 2 buah rumah didapati berisiko rendah, kita nasihat untuk berjaga-jagalah disebabkan taburan hujan begitu lebat pada beberapa hari, agar mereka dapat bersiap sedialah untuk sebarang kemungkinan akan berlaku.
Biarpun sedih rumah yang didiami musnah akibat runtuhan yang berlaku di sebuah perkampungan Kampung Sadir di Padawan ini, bagaimanapun ahli keluarga mangsa tetap bersyukur kerana mangsa berada dalam keadaan yang selamat. Laporan Lukman Muhammad bersama Muhammad Gusti dari Padawan untuk TVS.
Meanwhile, following the next update, as incessant heavy rain in the night and pre-dawn hours caused parts of Bau district in southern Sarawak to be hit by floods on Wednesday. Now, the villagers described the situation as the most horrifying one yet. Meanwhile, Ruben Gomez has the report. The residents affected immediately relocated to a safe place at their neighbours' homes.
Ini secara perlahan lah, banjir secara perlahan. Bermula dari di bahagian dapur, lepas dalam pukul 9, pukul 10 macam ya, masuk di bahagian ruang tamu. Kami ngupuklah berkemas barang, ngupuk kemas berpindah di rumah jiran kami di atas ya, yang saya dah kena banjir. Di sialah kami berpindah.
Untuk macam jalan utama, dak transport, dak jalan bas, macam orang turun kerja, ada kesan je lah dengan community areas tu. Ya macam kami pun terkesan je dapat turun kerja je orang itu. Jaga banjir tu. Paksa je lah. Benda baik besar macam tu lah jadi lah. Nang si dapat apa-apa dah lah.
The main roads in Bau district were cut off due to the heavy flood, which prompted the Fire and Rescue Department and other agencies to be dispatched to the location immediately.
Dan buat masa ni kami telah membubarkan shift kepada gerak kerja dari 12 jam ke 24 jam. Bagi membolehkan anggota cukup untuk beroperasi. Dan kekangan sekarang ni kita hanya nak tunggu anggota hadir ke balai disebabkan banyak tempat-tempat untuk hadir ke balai telah terputus, so mereka lambat sekarang ni.
Pagi tadi kami dengan pihak bomba ingin ke kawasan tanah runtuh di Bau, namun niat kami dibatalkan kerana jalan utama dengan jalan alternatif telah dilimpah dengan banjir yang deras. Hujan lebat akan berterusan, orang ramai diminta berhati-hati. Elakkan keluar di waktu malam, musibah akan berlaku bila-bila masa. Menurut ramalan Met Malaysia, ribut petir dijangka berlarutan hingga esok. Ingat, amalkan 3L, tidak lalai, leka dan lupa. Ingat sebelum kena, jimat sebelum habis. Ruben Gomez, TVS.
Now, a body part believed to be of the vicious crocodile attack victim at Kampung Meranik, Kota Samarahan, was found at 12 noon today. Now, the search team found that mostly intact right leg from thigh to foot of 28-year-old Azian Azhar, 7.5 kilometers away from the scene of the attack.
According to a statement by State Fire and Rescue Department spokesperson, surface search operation, which began on January 12, was expanded to 15 kilometers in radius around the location of the attack. The team also found the victim clothes throughout the 2 days operation at the dens of the crocodile. The body part was discovered tangled between the trees along the Samarahan River mouth. However, no other body part has been found so far. The search and rescue operation was called off after the victim's family accepted and believed that the body part found was of Azian. The search operation involved over 50 personnel and volunteers and 11 boats. On January 12 at 3:45 a.m., Azian, who was accompanied by his father, was fishing at the river when a crocodile struck and attacked and dragged the victim into the river.
Welcome back to the Nightline. Now, following the next news, as the state government respects the decision of the young Dipertuan Agong Sultan Abdullah Sultan Ahmad Shah, who has declared a state of emergency to curb the spread of COVID-19. He is optimistic the election would be able to hold its state election if the COVID-19 situation in the state improves and the emergency is lifted earlier. The Chief Minister said the state has to comply with the nationwide emergency proclaimed in accordance to the law stated in the Federal Constitution and Sarawak to abide by the decision.
If the situation has improved and the Agong is convinced that there has been a lot of improvement he can issue another proclamation. Proclamation say lah, katakanlah Sarawak is okay, turun, dia boleh, he can also declare, proclaim that maybe Sarawak is okay now, so part of Malaysia can be lifted.
Abang Johari said with the rising cases of COVID-19 due to the Pasai cluster in Cebu, and if the situation is managed well, the transmission of the infection in the state will be curbed.
So if we can contain that, it comes down, then up to them to see our situation. If they say that, oh, Sarawak boleh sudah, liftkan. Lift. Election lah.
The Sarawak government's mandate will last until June 2021. Now, there's no need to evacuate to a temporary relief centre if the situation is not critical. This was urged by Sarawak Minister of Local Government and Housing, Dato' Seri Dr. Sim Kui Hian, who said this is especially true for those living in two-storey houses.
He said this restraint is necessary in order to avoid the risk of COVID-19 infection. Flood victims who live in two-storey houses are encouraged to makeshift their own shelters by moving to the upper floor of their house. However, victims may register with government agencies to receive aid. This approach is one of the measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 and prevent possible new outbreaks at evacuation centres.
Now, the 24-hour operation room at the Sarawak Rivers Board that is connected to the Kuching Barrage Operation Room has been activated to closely monitor water levels. This is following the incessant heavy rain that caused an influx of water into Sarawak's rain catchment areas. Transport Minister Lee Kim Shin said 22 telemetry station units are reliably providing real-time data to the Kuching Barrage Operation Room. His ministry and the Sarawak Rivers Board, as well as Kuching Barrage Operator, are checking and manual testing the telemetry stations. Information on rain and water levels obtained from these telemetry stations are used to control the release of excess water from Sarawak's rain catchment areas to the sea. Lee also advised those living in low-lying areas to be more vigilant. Residents in flood-prone areas are also reminded to follow any advice issued by the authorities from time to time. Meanwhile, Sarawak is looking at acquiring more aggressive patrol vehicles such as scramblers, all-terrain vehicles or ATVs, and four-wheel drive vehicles, as well as the use of high-capacity drones to strengthen its border security. The Sarawak Border Security Committee, or SBSC, will work very closely with the State Disaster Management Committee to assist in funding for the procurement of the necessary machinery and equipment for forces to ensure more aggressive monitoring at the border. Ma Sing, who today chaired SBSC's first meeting for this year, said he was concerned about the issue of illegal immigrants entering Sarawak, particularly with the current spike of COVID-19 cases in the state. He added a good telecommunication network and border posts and implementation agency control center also needs to be provided. This is to distribute information about unwanted activities in the state border. In the same development, efforts to hunt down those who are complicit with immigrants entering the state also needs to be undertaken. Thank you for staying with me. Now, several areas in Sabah and Sarawak, Perhentian and Redang Island in Terengganu, and Tioman Island in Pahang are among 137 locations identified for the essential goods distribution this year. According to Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Minister Datuk Seri Alexander Nantalinggi, the increase in allocation for the program to 200 million ringgit this year from 150 million ringgit in 2020 has enabled the ministry to extend it to new areas. He also said the appointment of transport companies for the distribution this year would be made according to the standard operating procedure approved by the Finance Ministry. Meanwhile, to avoid supply disruption pending appointments of the new transporters, the ministry has agreed to extend the contract of existing companies until April 30. Elaborating further, Nanta said the program, implemented since 2009, had helped rural communities to enjoy 7 basic necessities, namely rice, sugar, flour, cooking oil, LPG, RON 95 petrol and diesel at controlled prices. Meanwhile, the Malaysian Ministry of Health is targeting a reduction in COVID-19 cases in the country from an average of 2,000 cases a day to 500 cases a day. Now, Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham Abdullah said it would probably take around 4 weeks to reach that target.
Through a Facebook statement, the estimate is based on the current situation of high daily cases and an R0 or infectivity rate of over 1.0. He added the movement control order cannot be prolonged as it could have a negative impact on economic growth. In order to curb the spread of the pandemic, he hoped that the people would stay at home and practice standard operating procedures so that the chain of infection could be severed. If the number of cases drop, a conditional movement control order is still required to flatten the curve.
Meanwhile, close contact screening on those who were exposed to positive COVID-19 cases are crucial at this moment.
Dr. Noor Hisham explained that the measure is taken in order to curb the spread of the coronavirus. In a Twitter statement, he also explained the true definition of close contact. According to him, close contact means those who were exposed to positive COVID-19 cases within 1 meter and for over 15 minutes.
As Malaysia navigates through the COVID-19 pandemic, the people are ensured their well-being and economic sustainability. Hence, the government will continue to respond effectively to the challenging environment while maintaining economic growth and resilience. According to Minister of Finance Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Abdul Aziz, the ministry gives assurance that Malaysia has a resilient capital market ecosystem supported by ample liquidity. He also added that there are proper market management measures in place to manage volatility with economic sectors and financial systems that have been set up.
Anda masih boleh pergi ke bank dan institusi kewangan bagi menguruskan simpanan dan pelaburan anda seperti biasa. Kerajaan dan agensi-agensi berkaitan akan memudah cara dan memastikan keadaan pasaran kekal kondusif dan teratur dalam tempoh tersebut.
In terms of business and economy, the manufacturing and services sector are still allowed to operate, including their supply chain sectors. Zafrul commented that the ministry is committed to monitor conditions to ensure that the supply chain is adequate to ensure economic activities can still be continued.
Bagi pengusaha kecil dan mikro, gerai-gerai juga masih boleh dibuka dan beroperasi dalam tempoh ini, walaupun dengan SOP yang lebih ketat. Contohnya, pembeli hanya boleh membeli secara bungkus atau take away. Kita akan menjaga punca rezeki rakyat sebaiknya.
And that wraps up TVS Nightline for tonight. And here at TVS, we hope that the flood victims who are going through this ordeal will continue to stay calm and stay safe. Here with me, Cheryl Shamina, hoping that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'll see you next time. Have a good night.